What happens when law, business, and life collide? Each week on Lead Counsel, your host Tom Tona will take a deep dive into topics related to the law, the business of law, and life. There will be insightful discussions with industry insiders, experts, and thought leaders making significant contributions and meaningful differences in their fields of expertise. Tom is the founder and managing attorney at TonaLaw. He has been a practicing attorney since 1994 and the leader of TonaLaw since it opened in 2001. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with free information on law and the business of law, and to give you actionable tools related to each of these areas. Now, here's Tom.
Hey, welcome back to the Lead Counsel podcast. This is your host, Tom Tona. I'm here with my good friend, Juliet. Jules, what's going on?
Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
So, Jules, today we have Marc Whitehead on. Marc is a Houston, Texas attorney. He's double board certified in personal injury and Social Security disability law. His practice is dedicated to disability law with a specialized niche in long-term disability insurance denials, Social Security disability, and veterans disability. He's authored multiple books on the topic of disability benefit claims and litigation. He runs a national practice and has successfully litigated disability claims in 44 states, including Puerto Rico. Marc is also the editor and publisher of one of my favorite newsletters that I get every other month called The Successful Barrister, Marketing, Management, and Life Skills That Probably Won't Get You Disbarred. It's actually a really robust newsletter, Jules, and it gives out a ton of law firm management and leadership content. And it's also done in a very tongue-in-cheek kind of way. Marc's got a really interesting and funny sense of humor.
They come across my desk all the time, and it's always the ones that I remember. And they're always such an interesting read.
Marc is also an adjunct practice advisor for Atticus, where he advises and coaches other lawyers on running successful practices. So without further ado, let's get to the interview. All right. So, Marc, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Oh, I am fantastic. I am excellent. I'm just sitting here in the Texas heat melting away, but, can't complain.
How hot is it by you?
It's cracking 101, 102 every day.
Yeah, man. That's a little hot. That's a little hot.
But we knew that when we signed up for it in Texas, so we just roll with it.
Yeah, well, you get other good stuff, right? There's always that trade-off for the good stuff. You get that extreme boil and fry an egg on the sidewalk heat. So, Marc, when I did the introduction, which I cut before you came on, I introduced you as the marketing and business genius that I remember from, it's got to be about 5 years ago when we were in the same group with Atticus. And I truly do feel that way. I know that you have put on presentations with the American Association of Justice, and you speak across the country about marketing in the law and business, right? And you're also a business coach at this point for lawyers and law firms. So let's first start talking about law firm marketing. And because years ago, you gave me your marketing system, right? You emailed it to me. And it was so in depth that I was just instantly floored by your extent of knowledge. So it's probably one of the most requested topics that I get when I get DMs on social media. People want to hear about law firm marketing. If you go on Reddit and you join the subreddit law firms, you'll just see so many questions from people that are at the place we were at probably 20 years ago, right? They're asking the questions of what can I do to bring in business, et cetera. So being that it's such a challenging field because they don't teach it in law school, how did you get started with law firm marketing? And what would you say attributed to you becoming such a strong force in marketing in the law space?
Embarrassingly, I know I look like I'm about 29 years old, but I've been practicing law now for 31 years, I think, this fall. So back in my day, when I first started 31 years ago, there was this thing called the Yellow Pages. And it's funny because, when I talk to new lawyers, I have to explain to them what the Yellow Pages were. But that's how we all started out. We were doing PI law. We were doing criminal law. We were doing some bankruptcy law. Basically, we were doing anything that was consumer facing. Because why? I was a brand new young lawyer that had started their own firm, and no business worth their salt would consider hiring me. So what are my options? Well, my options are simply, I need to be a consumer-facing law firm. What does that mean? Well, that means personal injury. That means family law. That means bankruptcy. That means criminal law. Those types of practices. And how do, if you're in a consumer-facing practice, how do you reach the consumer? That's ultimately where you're looking. And back then, it was either TV or the Yellow Pages or maybe Billboard, and nobody could afford TV. But we could afford the Yellow Pages. And that actually worked really, really well for the early part of the 90s. We would sign up 10, 15, 20 cases a month, easy, out of the Yellow Pages. And it's really where the practice started. But as we all know, technology is what it is. And what works today is going to become obsolete tomorrow. And that's exactly what happened to the Yellow Pages. They became obsolete. But I had one smart salesperson that used to sell me my Yellow Page ad. And he goes, there's this thing called the internet, and it's going to be the next big thing. And I'm like, yeah, right. But he said, you need to start working on it. You need to start working on it now. And he hooked me up with some people he knew. And fortunately, I was one of the first people that really started taking the internet seriously back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and realizing that it was the next Yellow Pages. Because you have to think about, what's the client experience? What's the client journey look like? The client doesn't buy law. The client doesn't buy lawyers. The client is looking for some guide or guru out there that will solve their problems. So how do people think about that when they realize they have a problem and they need somebody to help me solve the problem? So that's kind of how we started, how we took off. We actually started to think like a client. What does our ideal client look like? You have to know that first. What are you looking for? And then in turn, how does that client think? When that client has a problem, you just gameplay it out. And what are they going to do? Who's the first person they're going to call? Where are they going to look? What are they going to look for? What search terms are they going to look for? So we really gameplayed it out. And I had some smart people that helped me. Some people through Atticus. Atticus actually hooked me up with a now retired internet guru from back in the early 2000s. And we really just sat around and gameplayed it and worked it out in our heads and just started from there reverse engineering it and figuring out how to get the right marketing channel, the right marketing message, the right way to sell to that client. Sales is a dirty word in legal, but it's true. We have to sell ourselves. So how do I sell myself? In other words, how do I convince them to sign on the dotted line? And then how do I provide excellent customer service to that person so that person then refers their friends to me? And it just becomes a big continuous marketing cycle. You market well, you sell yourself well, you do good work, you stay top of mind with your client base, and it just comes right around to the top where they send you more work. And it's like a big flywheel. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. I probably didn't make my first $1 million for the first 20 years of my practice, but then my second $1 million came within 6 months, and the third one came 6 months after that. It was an overnight success, 20 years in the making.
I say it all the time because that was my experience too, right? Like, you always look at that 7-figure mark as a big break point. And then you do that and you go, oh man, look, I got to do more than that. And then next thing you know, you're eyeballing 8 figures. I'll ask you a personal question. And then if you tell me you don't want to answer it, you don't have to answer. But have you hit the 8-figure strata yet?
We will this year.
Nice. My man. Nice.
This will be the year, assuming that I get paid on one particular thing that's hanging out. So I'll either get paid this fall or in the spring. So that might, I might teeter on the edge because of that. But
I'll tell you what, it's amazing because we were in a group and Craig was on the show. Craig calls himself the 8-figure lawyer. So I'm not divulging any secrets, but it was such a great thing. Look, the price of the Atticus group that we were in Dallas was worth the price of admission to the extent that just of being in the room with the same people, like Craig, 8-figure guy, you, 8-figure guy, I want to cross 8 figures. Herb is making plans along those lines. And then the 2 ladies that we know out in California that have that big Title IX firm, same thing. Like, how do you get so many 8-figure players in one room? Like, it's the luck of the draw plus being in the right place and doing the hard work that we all did. That's the other thing. you're talking about 8 years ago, and you and I are now talking about that next strata. So congratulations, man. That just goes as a testament of your skill set, your willingness to grind. I also look like I'm 27, but I've got a fully gray beard and I've been doing this 30 years as well. And so I'm sure people say the same thing to you. Like, you don't need to be grinding as hard as you are right now, right? But you do anyway. So to me, that's a testament to who you are, how you do it. So congratulations again. That's awesome. Awesome to hear.
I enjoy it. I really enjoy what I do. I mean, that's one of the great things about the Atticus philosophy that we were taught all these years is, building a law firm, building a lifestyle law firm, a law firm that fits your lifestyle, as opposed to making your life fit your law firm. I mean, that's the recipe for divorce and disaster. But when you make your law firm fit your lifestyle, you enjoy coming to work every day. I'm never going to retire. I mean, I could retire today. I don't need the money.
Right.
But I enjoy what I do. And we help people. I mean, I know for a fact, I tell my staff all the time, remember, we're the good guys because we go to work every day and we help people. So as long as my mind and my body allow me, I don't plan on retiring because I just like being here. I like being around the people that I'm with. I like being around my team. I like being around my clients. And if you build that kind of environment, the money will come. Every day is a new venture and a new challenge.
It's funny because you and I, before we jumped on and started recording, we were talking about EOS. One of the concerns that always made me nervous about the statement of I'm never going to retire, right, is I've seen it. You've probably seen this too. A lot of lawyers that miss their peak and then they do something or they make a mistake and it starts to really impact everything else. One of the things that I like about EOS is I have one person that I'm literally talking to at any time. That's it. Out of an organization of almost 40 people right now, one person, she does all the rest of the communication for me. I still will hold a team meeting where we do an executive leadership meeting once a week. And then I will still be involved with some team meetings, but I'm getting myself out of those because I do worry about age and everything else kicking in. So, but I know your business structure and I know the way you were set up many, many years ago. You've got middle management. You've got layers of leadership in there already. So I think that's just, again, I'm doing the same thing. You love what you do. You come in and do what you love. And then we have people executing on all of the vision that we bring to the table. So I think that's awesome. Interestingly enough, one of the questions I got recently that I saw on Reddit was, what can I do to bring in more business? What would you say are the top 3 marketing needle movers for you that if you could only do 3 things yourself without a team that you have, and let's assume for a second you're looking across $1 million to $3 million, what top 3 things would you focus on in marketing?
Actually, that's pretty easy because I coach other lawyers and I see other lawyers' firms and what's working for them and what's not working. And 3 things consistently are what work across the board for all the firms that I've looked at, including mine. And the first one is, I just loosely call it digital marketing. It's the yellow pages of the 21st century. Most people who are looking for a consumer-based lawyer are going to probably be on the internet looking at some point. Okay, maybe they're just looking blindly, or maybe they've gotten a few names from other people who said, try this one, and now they're trying to compare 2 or 3 different lawyers. They're going to go to the internet and look these guys up. Okay, I just did that. I hired a lawyer up in New York on a real estate matter. I didn't know anybody up there. I got a couple of names from my real estate agent, and I looked them up, and one of them had a killer website with a lot of cool information, and the other 2 barely had a listing. Well, who did I call? I called the one with the killer website, of course.
Right.
So regardless of whether they find you originally from on the internet or whether somebody drops your name and then they want to further check you out, because that's what people do, a strong internet presence is by far the number one thing. Second thing, and I found, it's referrals from other lawyers. All lawyers have their own herd of people, their own tribe, but they can't serve their whole herd. Most lawyers, for good reason, specialize, which means they can't handle everything that comes their way. So if you can create your tribe of lawyers, and I've created a tribe of about 4,500 lawyers on my list. And I market to that list constantly. So doing that, I have a steady flow of referrals from lawyers. They come in every damn day. And lawyers make great referral sources. So that's number two. The third one is your client base. And I would actually throw in your personal contacts into that list. So I'm going to call it your client base, your friends and family list, your church list, just any individual that you know. We have a separate marketing program for those people, what I call individual-based marketing versus attorney marketing. I know some lawyers who have a success in marketing to other professionals, medical professionals, therapists, chiros, doctors. I don't in my practice, but I know other lawyers do. That might be another list out there to hit. But those are the three that I see across the board, across all the people I coach. It's digital marketing, however you want to term that, marketing to other lawyers, marketing to your individual and client database. Those are the three things that consistently always work. And all of those take time to do.
I
starts
agree.
overnight. It takes time. Mm-hmm. The frustration with those three things are that they take time and they're hard to scale. Mm-hmm. And the reason that lawyers fall in love with the other things like TV or radio or billboards or even pay-per-click is that they're very easy to scale. You can throw money at them very quickly and you can scale them up very quickly. The problem is they're not terribly effective. They're not terribly efficient when you talk about how to use marketing dollars. And that's always been my frustration because I was like, gee, I would love to run a national TV campaign and just get client after client after client after client. And what I have done, and I've run some national TV before, is I get a ton of phone calls and very few cases.
Right.
I'm like, it is a frustrating thing, but that's kind of, in my mind, effective is better than something that you could rapidly scale.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the list you put down is perfect because it applies to everybody, whether you're doing 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures. I know nine-figure players that still do referral-based lunches because it's important for them, right? If they're in the mass tort space, they want to lock down a referral source who's going to then be advertising for mass tort cases. Touching on what you just said about the frustration of it, you can either spend time or you could spend money, you could spend both. But interestingly enough, I know you do a lot of referral marketing to lawyers, and that's a big thing. You said 4,500 lawyers. Mm-hmm. How much are you doing on LinkedIn with that?
I have recently hired a social media marketing person in my office who handles just my social media, which includes LinkedIn. So I would say traditionally we have not done much with that at all. It's starting to change with adding that new person within my office, but traditionally I have not. I'm not a big social media person individually. I wouldn't know a tweet if it hit me in the ass. But it's not that I don't have a social media presence. I just have other people that assist me with it. But it was funny. My college-age daughter called me the other day like, Dad, you have 12,000 Twitter followers. And I'm like, wow. What's a Twitter? I didn't know. So yes, I think social media is helpful, but when you become my age and you're just totally not interested in it, it's good to hire somebody to help you with that. And LinkedIn is part of that. What I have done is I've just been really good about collecting names my entire career, and quite frankly, in stealing lists of things. I was president of the Houston Trial Lawyers Association. We had 800 members. Well, I had access to the list. So now that list is on my list. I'm on the board of directors of Texas Trial Lawyers. Well, guess what? That list is now on my list. I'm in AAJ. I'm in Atticus. So I have all of these lists. But these aren't random lists. It's not like I went out and bought a list. These are lists where I have some affiliation. I have some association with these people.
Right.
Every defense attorney that I've ever had a case with is on my list because I've always been nice. I've always been trying to be polite to everybody I meet. Apparently, all the local judges are on my list because I get referrals from judges.
Right.
I built a list over time, but then you have to do something with that list. You have to market to that list. And we put a lot of effort into that to stay in front of the list.
We see that through your bi-monthly newsletters. They come across our office all the time. And honestly, they're the ones that always make an impression.
I have a newsletter that's specifically for lawyers called The Successful Barrister. And we have cartoon characters in there for all the lawyers. It's meant to be funny. It's meant to be snarky. The byline on it is marketing management and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. We don't talk anything really about the law. We just talk about marketing and management, life skills, basically things that lawyers might be interested in. And like I said, it's just meant to be funny. It's meant to be snarky. It sometimes has pissed a few people off. But
Most
it's a great way to stay in front of everybody. We do it every other month. And last year, I think it was last year, we decided to cut back a little bit on the cost of it because it is expensive to mail. And we only mailed out 4 issues instead of 6. And I got all kind of complaints. Did I fall off the list? What happened? Why am I not getting your newsletter? I'm like, oh, crap. So we've gone back to 6 to satisfy our yearning public. But that was actually kind of funny. It actually told me that it must be working because if people are complaining, they're not getting it.
I can give you a cheat code on something that Jules and I have discovered because Jules is my marketing coordinator, right? Originally, I was new to social media about a year and a half ago. I would say that the most effective stuff that I do is the stuff I actually do. And I would say that while you think you're not a social media guy, you have so much wisdom that I think, let's say for a second, you like to write. You could go on LinkedIn and your social media person can then, what she can do is do targeted outreach to people that you want to build an audience with, right? And you put out the content though. You open up that app and you write 1 or 2 thoughts from your head about the practice of law, marketing. So you talk about a network list of 4,500 attorneys. In 18 months, I built it up to we're at 8,700 predominantly lawyers on LinkedIn. I post anywhere from 1 to 3 times a day, almost every day. I don't let Jules do it, even though Jules knows my voice. Jules does my Facebook, my Instagram, because she does know my marketing and brand voice. But dude, you could take your 4,500, get all of them hooked up to you on LinkedIn. You post the stuff you really do know about, right? Like marketing, management. Take a look at my LinkedIn and I get personal injury referrals weekly now off my LinkedIn, not to mention the no-fault silo I built. So there is a cheat code there. I was not a social media guy. I don't post anything about my personal life. Very little. But I'm a huge fan of the marketing aspect. I don't do it for marketing. I do it where I'm like, even with the podcast, this is a lot of work for Jules and I, but we do it to provide value. But what that does is top of mind awareness, right? So I get calls on this about this podcast all the time, text, DMs, whatever. So like, you'll use this podcast for marketing purposes. It'll be great for you.
Fortunately, I have been smart enough to recently hire some young, smart people to help me with my marketing. Like Jules here. Jules, you look to be like maybe about 12 years old or something like that.
Just double that.
We need some teenagers to come work for us and tell us how to do these things.
Jules is awesome. I listen, all the stuff that we're doing right now, from the podcast to social media, the SEO stuff, everything. She handles all of it. So it's indispensable. Like you said, you got to have that team underneath you. And then just figure out, like Gary Vaynerchuk, have your team studying his stuff because he talks about figuring out the type of marketing you like, right? So if you like video and you like to make video, then make video. But don't make video if you don't. If you have, like mine, a face for radio, right? Then, I mean, look, I do video stuff because I'm not really self-conscious about how I look, but
it's mainly because I push him.
It's because Juliet pushes me to do it. But where my real sweet spot is, I love to write and I love talking about business and marketing of law firms, and I do that on LinkedIn. So yeah, you could take your 4,500 and you, believe it or not, you'll be like, wow, this just put everything on steroids, because you will be getting that scalability, but still that referral touch. Because when you meet somebody that you're connected to on LinkedIn, all of a sudden they feel like they know you already, right? You do a lot of masterminds and stuff like that. You'll start crisscrossing with a lot of people.
Right.
So,
all right, you're hired. You're hired.
And like you mentioned earlier, it's about hiring people who know about the certain area or who have a higher knowledge in it just to help you out. Like you said, when you got started on the internet, you hired people who knew the internet to help you with it. So it's the exact same
Yeah,
thing
social
now.
media is the new internet, man, and it's still so untapped. And one of the things that you said you wanted to talk about is the blue ocean niche. It is the blue ocean, man, right now, because most guys our age don't want to do it.
Technically, I really don't want to do it. But the fact that my young marketing people are so enthusiastic about it, I sort of like start getting enthusiastic by just being around them, because that's,
Yeah.
if you're not an energetic person, hire energetic people to be around you so you can feed off of them.
Right. Well, that's what we have to do at our age, right? Like at our age, it's too easy to not grind every day. So to continually push us, we have to surround ourselves with super hungry people like Jules, who is constantly in my office with the camera and the content ideas and all of that stuff. So yeah.
I try.
Did you ever do anything in marketing where you would just like, oh, that was a stinker? Like I would tell people to avoid that at all costs.
Oh, God, so many things I've done. I've literally made every mistake in the book. Fortunately, every mistake I've ever made, it's always been with it in mind that if this totally fails, I'll still be fine. I don't ever bet the farm on anything. I just test a lot of things. I've tested different types of internet schemes. I've tested different types of TV schemes, infomercial schemes, pay-per lead. God, here's the one I did. I spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000 or $60,000 doing an email marketing campaign to doctors that was sold to me by a marketing company. And I literally got one lead out of the whole campaign, and it was a dud. So basically, I spent $50,000 a lead, an infinite amount for money per signed case.
Oh, that's painful.
But you know what, Mark?
50 G's down the toilet. But you know what? 50 G's is not that big of a deal. It was a test. I didn't spend 5 million. I spent 50 G's. So.
But the magic in what you said is that you're willing to make mistakes, right? I think that anybody that is doing what we're doing, me, you, and, talking about our circle of guys like Craig, Herb, we're always willing to be able to try something, understanding that there's going to be a failure rate. You're going to make mistakes. And I do think that willingness to make mistakes is what propels us ahead of people who are like so white knuckle gripping on the fear aspect of, do I do this? Do I try this new marketing thing? Or do I delegate, right? I think that I was a different delegator 10, 15 years ago because of fear. Now, I literally delegate everything. And I learned that from guys like you, Craig, Herb, like just different philosophies on letting go of the vine, as they say. So,
yes. It's all about just putting a little trust and faith in human nature. Most people want to do good. So,
yeah. And it is all about trial and error in marketing. I feel like, especially in the personal injury field, also, what works for Mark won't necessarily work for Tom. So it's really just about that testing back and forth between different marketing strategies.
But then again, the stuff that Mark gave us earlier, those 3 timeless principles, man, those are like gold. Those make me want to go back and say, look, we're not mining enough of our CRM and our current existing client database. So I love talking to guys like Mark because it's a constant reminder.
It's just tried and true that ultimately people, I know this is cliche, but people hire lawyers that they know, like, and trust. So you better find some people that know, like, and trust you,
right,
in one way or another. So, and that's the thing, especially for young lawyers. They'll get out there like, well, I don't have a network. The easiest thing for them to do is to borrow some money from somebody and spend it real quickly. And then all of a sudden they're in debt and they still don't have any clients.
Right. I'll tell you what, though, like,
years hard work.
Dude, I ran an experiment yesterday. I was telling Juliet, not yesterday, maybe the day before. I said, I'm not very active on Reddit. So I joined all of these forums and I said, I want to see what kind of heat I can generate by just talking about stuff I love to talk about. By the end of the afternoon, I had 4 people writing me for further interaction. So I am now developing and building community by being authentic and talking about what I know, what I feel like I excel at, and what I love to talk about. Business of law firm and marketing. So speaking of the business side. Let's switch because I heard you on a different podcast that I was listening to this morning, doing a little bit of background on you. And you also said you brought up the concept of the blue ocean niche with Juliet prior to this podcast. So describe for anybody listening to this, what is the blue? I know what it is because I read the book Blue Ocean, but tell people what the blue ocean niche philosophy is and then your strategy, how you came up with it and what that looks like.
Basically, the concept of blue ocean or red ocean. Red ocean is where all your competition is, and they're all fishing for the same fish in the same spot. And the blue ocean theory is like go where nobody else is. Look for the areas or the clients that nobody else is looking for because it's easier to market to them. And I used to be a personal injury lawyer, a pure single event, car accident, personal injury lawyer. I'm sure in your neck of the woods, and I know it is in my neck of the woods, it is hard. It's dog eat dog. Everybody wants the car wreck cases. So what I did is I developed a niche outside of personal injury law, what I generally call disability benefit law. And it's adjacent to PI law. I mean, it's a contingency fee practice, but I'm representing people who are seeking their disability benefits through one of the three major systems, either the veteran system or the Social Security disability system, or through private disability insurance. And it's a contingency fee practice, just like a PI single event practice is, but there's very few people out there, relatively speaking, that do what I do. So what I call it's my blue ocean. I really don't have a lot of competition. Within the city of Houston, I probably have maybe 4 or 5 people that sort of do what I do, but they don't really do it as hard and as extensively as I do. I'm known as the disability guy in Houston. Anywhere I go, I'm the guy. And it wasn't that hard to become known as the guy in my local territory because the competition wasn't expensive. As opposed to if I wanted to become known as the car wreck guy, you know how hard that would be?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
There's just no way to do it. So that's kind of what I was talking about when I talk about the blue ocean strategy is don't try to do what everybody else is doing, do something slightly adjacent to it. And what that allows me to do is like all of a sudden now all the PI lawyers in Houston all refer their disability claims over to me because I'm still part of that group. I used to be their president, but I don't directly compete with them. I'm just slightly adjacent to them. And then once you figure that out, then I realized, well, I could be the disability guy in the whole state of Texas. And well, wait a minute, why don't I just stop it in Texas? I can be the disability guy across the whole nation. So I just kept expanding outward and outward. And I'm not the disability guy across the whole United States yet, but I'm working on it. And it's something to aspire to.
Keyword yet.
Yeah. So you know what's funny about that strategy, Marc? It was something that when I listened to the podcast, I heard you talking about this and I was like, wow, that's exactly what I did. And for the same reasons, by the way. You described it as being just sick of because you're an entrepreneur, sick of the instability of profitability / cash flow in PI. And I had the same epiphany about 15 years ago. And I looked upstream in the PI space and said, well, who can I hit that's a B2B source? And that's how I developed my no-fault collection niche. And quite honestly, we're probably one of the largest downstate no-fault collection firms. We have about 400 or so institutional clients, some of them publicly held. And we're doing like 14,000 files a year. Same exact thing, though. I didn't call it the blue ocean niche strategy when I stumbled upon the concept. I was like, I'm just going where no one else is. And those areas still exist. That's how some of my favorite mass tort guys, the one guy I know that does it that we're really tight, he's constantly just analyzing where is nobody else and there are injured people. And he's doing these wacky, esoteric type of liability concepts that all of a sudden turn into a mass tort. And he's like, but he's always ahead of the curve. He's always ahead of the curve.
And even in the PI world, I mean, you can niche down. I know somebody that's now specializes in representing people on gunshot wounds. And I'm like, I'm not even sure what that claim is, but he's the guy.
He's going against gun manufacturers, probably.
I don't even know what his cause of action is, but he's got something going, but that's just his niche. Personally, in Texas, I think somebody ought to become a slip and fall guru, because in Texas, the law on slip and fall is so bad that everybody just throws those cases away. Nobody wants them. But I still think that if you develop like that kind of niche and you just became known as that guy, you could have your pick of like the best of them and you could make a living at that. And you could, I think there's lots of little cubby holes in there that people could try to wedge themselves into if they just thought about it enough.
Yeah, something I found fascinating about your story was how you got into disability. And it was the story that you told Steve Riley on the Great Practice, Great Life podcast. And so just give us a real quick snapshot, because you literally went into a room with a stack of books and came out an expert. So like kind of just give us the longer form on that.
Well, so I can't remember exactly if I gave the PG version or the real nitty gritty version to Steve. What really happened was when I first opened my practice, I met a lawyer that had been disbarred.
Oh,
and to do Social Security disability work, you don't have to be a licensed attorney. So what he did is he went around to all the attorneys and said, give me your Social Security cases and I'll split the fee with you 50-50. That's when I first became aware of the practice. I wasn't even aware of it. So we did that for a while and I liked it. And then he got his license back and then he wanted to change the deal. And then he wanted to like give 20%. And I'm like, that's not quite as good as the 50% deal that I had become very, very used to. You know, and then there's a secondary story about how I ran into a marketer and a marketer basically convinced me to put a TV budget behind. He wanted me to split my TV budget half to personal injury and half to Social Security disability. And I'm like, why would I want to do that? And he said, just try it. Mm-hmm. And we signed up 0 PI cases and we signed up hundreds of Social Security disability clients. I'm like, oh shit, now it's real. Now I've got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's when I think what you were asking is like, when I decided to figure it out, I literally just got like 3 or 4 publications that really are the treatises that teach you how to do it. And I got into a room. I can't remember if I was a library or my bedroom or whatever. I got into a separate space for 3 or 4 days and I just literally read everything cover to cover and just sat there and figured it out. Because I had to, because I had a couple of 100 cases that's just sitting in my office and you better figure it out or you're about to get your butt sued.
If you just drill down and become an expert in any area, it's impossible to fail. I mean, you're the expert.
Well, look, that's what I was going to say. We've had people come on here and like last week we did a podcast with a real estate guy. He's 27 years old, 27, right, Jules? And he's built up a multiple 7-figure net worth. And I said, well, tell people how you did it. And he said, I became an expert. I flew across the country talking to experts to buy them a cup of coffee just to get them to talk to me. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You locked yourself in a room with a bunch of different treatises. How many attorneys are willing to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So I really love that idea.
Well, and the second part of that was then I took all those treatises that I had read, which were written for lawyers, and I turned around and produced my own book using those treatises as a source material, but I made it a consumer advocacy book, you know, a book dedicated or targeted to the client base. And I published that book, and once I published that book, boom, I'm the expert. I was the go-to guy. And it was just like all it took.
But I did want to ask you, you have a concept of the 8 levers of profitability that I've also heard you mention before. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, there are 8 things. This is another Atticus concept that they teach. It's actually in the Double Your Revenue class that I taught. I've gone through the class 3 times, and I actually taught it for the first time back in February. I'll go through it real quickly because I know you're pressed for time, but there's basically
fine. I got all day, man. I got all day.
Okay. You know, I mean, the first one is real simple. You need to increase the average value of your cases. What does that look like? Are you an hourly biller? Then you need to raise your rates. You know, are you a flat fee biller? Then raise your flat fee. Are you a contingency fee lawyer? Well, then maybe you need to improve the quality of the cases that you get or the quality of the cases that you accept. I mean, but whatever it is, you need to raise the average value of your cases across the board. You know, secondly, you got to have an all-star team. You have to view your staff, your team members, you have to view them as an investment, not as an expense. Because if you set it up right, if you train them right, you set up the systems, and you run your firm right, your staff, they don't cost you money. They make you money. But they can't be C players. You got to have A+ players. You got to create an all-star team. Then there's the concept of strategic delegation, which is there's no point in having an all-star team if you don't delegate the work and the authority down to them so they can maximize their productivity. They can't make you money if you don't give them the tools and the authority to do it. I think what was the fourth one? I'm thinking, rattling off in my head, trying to remember them all. Fourth one is just business skills. That is one of the problems with law schools is they don't teach you any business skills whatsoever. Most people come out and they have little or no idea on how to functionally run a business. So I think I would spend more time. Kind of my theory on it is by the time you hit your 5th year of practicing law, you're not going to really improve your technical skills all that much. You might improve them incrementally, but not really. You kind of get there unless something weird has happened in your life. But you can drastically improve your business skills. And quite frankly, you can kind of improve them overnight if you sit down and think about it. And there's lots of great publications out there. There's one I'm reading right now called, what's it called? The Building the Professional Services Firm. It's a great book. It's not specific to lawyers. It's specific to any sort of professional business. So they talk about accounting firms, consulting firms, and so forth. But basically, just so many concepts in there about how to run that type of business and run it profitably. But there's lots of books out there that you can go to. There's lots of seminars out there. There's lots of groups out there like Atticus or like you mentioned EOS, but all kind of groups out there that will help you with your business skills. And I think that's where lawyers really ought to spend a significant amount of time at. I already mentioned the referral marketing aspect of it. You got to have a regular pipeline of steady business, whether it's from other lawyers, whether it's from your client base, whether it's from your connections, whatever it is. But referral marketing is really, really, really key. In other words, relationship marketing. Also, it needs to be backed up by a strong internet presence because these days, people are simply going to look you up. A recommendation is not enough. People are still going to look you up. I don't know. What else am I'm sitting here blanking on top of my head.
Listen, you're giving us good stuff, man. I'm keeping track of the list, and it's tight.
But the relationships are so key. I like the ideal of a recurring revenue model, and this is kind of one of the things we talk about. I have a recurring revenue model within my practice. I know you do within your practice.
Yes.
That is going to look different for every practice area. In my niche, a lot of my cases, I get paid out over a 60-month period. I don't get paid all at once. So, we call them on-plan cases. So I know every month I have about 250 checks that are coming in. They're not big checks, but they add up to a lot of money. So I know every month my payroll is covered by this recurring revenue that's coming in. I don't even have to worry about it. Right. So now it's just gravy on top of that. My recollection is you have something similar to that.
Yep.
But having some model out there that you can get stuff that you can count on, it frees you up. It frees up your mind to think bigger, quite frankly, when you know that, your bases are covered. You don't have to worry. You're not hand to mouth every month. And that is such a big deal.
100%.
In technology.
Yep.
I was just going to say the last one I can think of is technology, and that can take a lot of different forms. There's a shit ton of AI out there right now that we're looking at. There's database relationship technology out there. There's customer service technology out there that can really change the way you run a practice, especially when you have thousands of clients. We have 4,000 active files going on right now.
Right. It's
hard work to stay in front of those people. You've got to use technology to really stay in front of a group of clients that big in an effective sort of way.
You got to do me a favor when you get off this call. If you go to my LinkedIn, I posted a Google AI customer service call that they did for Tesla. So this was an AI model that called a live Tesla lead and sold them on everything it was AI. And dude, not only was it showing empathy, it was using mirroring, all the effective sales techniques you would hear, mirroring, open-ended questions, active listening. And I was in awe. I'm like, I can't wait to get my hands on software like this. Like, it's just going to change the game. So yeah, you bring up major profitability levers, right? Infrastructure, that's your people. Technology, having the capacity to scale is built off of having the right technology in place. That doesn't mean you go out willy-nilly and spend $100,000 on technology. It means you do your research and say, what will benefit the firm, infrastructure, the people, and the clients, right? Which is exactly what you're voicing. So yeah, those profitability levers are worth their weight in gold that you just gave us. I ask this of every guest, and what would you say, looking back on the last 30 years, if you had to pick out your biggest needle mover, what would you say that was in terms of getting you to where you are today, about to cross 8 figures?
It was associating with bigger, smarter lawyers than where I was at that moment. They say you're the average of the 5 smartest people you hang around. Start hanging around smarter people. And what I mean by that is I used to never leave my little cocoon. I used to never leave Houston, Texas. But then all of a sudden I found groups. I found Atticus, a great group with smart people. I found Pilma, a great group with smart people. I started going to AAJ events, really, really smart people. And I started seeing the way other lawyers operated. I started looking specifically at smart lawyers, and I started visiting them. You know, I was at a conference in John Morgan, you know, one of the biggest PI lawyers in the country, just happened to start chatting with him. And he goes, Mark, you should come to Orlando and we'll show you how we do this stuff. And I heard later that he made that offer. He makes that offer to a lot of people and nobody ever takes him up on it. I took him up on it.
That's
I flew
awesome.
myself and 2 of my lawyers and my marketing director, and we spent the day in Orlando at John Morgan's office, and they showed us everything. And it totally changed the way we ran our operations.
Yeah.
We just did it again this year. We took a trip with multiple lawyers up to Philadelphia to visit a firm up there that had invited us to come look at how they were using their technology. So you got to get out of your comfort bubble, and you got to get out and you got to hang out with people who know what they're doing and try to emulate them.
Yeah. You know what's funny? So I'm going to the EOS
Tom always
conference.
repeats that.
Yeah. We say that all the time. And it's probably one of the, again, I am very blessed. That's why we started this podcast, because my Rolodex of my inner circle, I'm blessed. Like 7, 8 figure, 9 figure players that are on speed dial that I could text a guy like you, Herb, Craig, all of these different guys and ladies, right? So the ladies that were in our group, who are both coming on the podcast at some point, they were sleepers. They never talked about their success level nearly as much as what we did, right? Maybe that's just a male thing, that testosterone thing that we all have. So I'm going out to EOS in San Diego. I'm flying out to see them the day after. I'm going to spend time with them. And then I want to fly out to their main office to see their main operations, because those ladies are crushing it. They've been doing 8 figures for years. They just never told anybody. They were just really humble about it. So yeah, I think that the stuff that you're talking about doing, are people willing to say, oh, I'm not going to write that motion. It's way more important for me to get out of the office and talk to the bigger fish, right? So with that, man, first of all, I want to say thank you. I knew having you on was going to be a great thing. I mean, I knew you were doing great things. We haven't had a chance to catch up, and this gave us a chance to catch up, and I'm super happy. So thank you for coming on and sharing everything that you did. You just provided so much value in the last hour. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Well,
Thank you
thanks for
so
having
much.
me. I totally enjoyed it.